and do this, because I've got quite a bit to say between these two games. Obviously, they're just the same story, different versions. I gotta say, there's arguably one better than the other. Just hands down. Which is version 2. But I want to talk about version 1, because honestly, I have a bone to pick with version 1. It was probably not only the worst Splinter Cell game of the franchise, but arguably one of the worst games I have ever freaking played. For a few reasons, just because the story, the way that they played it out, didn't make sense. There was a lot of just nonsense in between, like, more or less, you could call it filler. A lot of the stuff that you even didn't make sense. And, oh man, probably my biggest problem with version 1 is the AI is so ridiculously flawed. Just the AI and the mechanics, the fundamentals of the game are so flawed to the point where it made the game unfair. Like, not even, like, there's one, I kind of mentioned this at one point. It's one thing if you make a game that's hard, whatever, that's fine. It's another point if you make it hard just for the sake of it being hard. That's poor game design. That's what version 1 was, and it wasn't fun. The AI was not consistent whatsoever throughout the majority of the game, and it made a lot of things next to impossible to get. I don't know why they removed a lot of the stuff that they did from the old Splinter Cells, but being that you have those lacking mechanics in version 1, it made the game very hard to want to keep playing. In terms of just movement, AI mechanics, and just the stealth mechanics just don't work. The majority of the missions were like in broad daylight. It just didn't feel like a Splinter Cell game whatsoever. Yeah, you didn't even have your like full gadget outfit for the majority of the game. Just very unfun. It was terrible. And that's where I think version 2 could probably save that by a lot. Because goddamn, was version 2 actually solid. It was a good story that made sense. The mechanics are the same as the original trilogy that we know and love and work. And I use that very in a very specific manner because, I mean, it's the old Splinter Cell game. They sort of do, but they sort of don't. But it was at least playable and enjoyable. That much I will say. And it felt like a Splinter Cell game. Version 1, no, it didn't. Now, my bone to pick with both of them is that the choices you make don't really affect the story. The only reason you have these choices is to give sort of the illusion. The version 1 kind of made it a little harder, or made it a little easier, because you have two different bars that you have to manage between NSA and the terrorists, the JBA. You had two bars to worry about. And it was very easy to keep both of them up. In version 2, you only had one bar that would move left and right between the two. It was a little kind of neutral zone, which made things a little more difficult, and you actually had to think about some of your choices. But other than that, none of your choices in either game actually mattered. But nonetheless, I think if you're new to playing Splinter Cell, I think I can undoubtedly recommend playing version 2 and just skipping version 1. Unless you want to play all of them, go ahead, that's all you, but I recommend the older version over the first one on all accounts. I think the only one that version 1 had over version 2 was a little more character development, none of which was important. But yeah. That's my little synopsis on Splinter Cell Double Agent.